Before you took your first breath, before your body was formed, before time began counting down the hours of your life, your soul already knew. It knew the shape of your mother's silence, the way your father would leave, the words that would wound you early, the patterns you would inherit without asking, the loneliness that would stretch across entire seasons of your childhood. And still, it said yes. This is not poetic theory. This is a sacred truth hidden in plain sight, a truth buried deep beneath layers of memory, conditioning, and pain. Your soul chose them, not because they were perfect, but because they were the ones who could trigger the exact vibrations, the exact wounds, the exact remembrance that would lead you back to yourself. But of course, you forgot. That was part of the agreement. To forget, to fall asleep inside a story, to believe that this family, this pain, this identity was you, only to one day begin asking, why them? Why me? Why this life? And that's when the contract stirs beneath the surface, not in words, but in echoes, in déjà vu, in a pain too familiar for this lifetime alone. That's what you're feeling now, isn't it? The tug, the whisper, the sense that none of this is random, because it isn't and never was. Your soul made a pact before coming here, not with punishment in mind, but with evolution. You see, growth does not come from comfort. Light is not born in perfection, and healing that often begins with a wound that seems impossible to forgive. So your soul chose a family not to destroy you, but to awaken you. Maybe they loved you too little, or loved you the wrong way. Maybe they tried but couldn't reach you. Maybe they were the source of the very pain you now spend your life trying to heal in others. Still, you chose them, because there was something in you, a knowing beyond time, that recognized this family as the fire you needed to walk through, to remember the light you carry. And here you are, older, wiser, still healing, still searching, but starting to see that the pain was never the punishment. It was the portal. It was the reason your eyes began to open. It was the reason you're even listening to this now. And maybe, just maybe, you're beginning to feel something stir inside. Not resentment, not confusion, but remembrance. The family was never random. They were mirrors, messengers, contracts dressed as parents, siblings, caretakers, each one playing a role in your awakening. But awakening isn't instant. It unfolds slowly, like light returning after a storm. And it begins here, in the willingness to look back, not with blame, but with spiritual eyes. To ask yourself, what did I come here to learn from this pain? What am I still carrying that was never mine? And more importantly, am I ready to remember who I was before the forgetting? Because that's the path you're walking now. You are not broken. You are breaking through the illusion of randomness, through the idea that you are a victim of circumstance, through the belief that your story ends where your family's dysfunction begins. Your soul is rising. And as it does, so does the truth. This life and this name, this story, was not forced upon you. It was chosen by the most courageous part of you, the part that knew you could survive it and transform it. Let that sink in. If something inside you stirred while listening to this, leave a comment below. Sometimes typing the truth is the first time we fully admit it to ourselves. And if you feel this message reaching into your story, subscribe to walk with us through the rest of this remembering, because we've only just begun. In the next chapter, we'll explore the first real sign that your soul is awakening to the reason behind the family you chose, and how the very pain you once rejected may be the doorway to your greatest power. Let's keep walking. The first sign. The pain begins to speak in patterns. At first, it just hurts. There's no higher meaning, no poetic realization, just raw, unexplainable ache. You look at your family and wonder, how could they do this to me? How could people meant to protect be the ones who cut so deep? But something inside you starts to shift. A whisper begins to form beneath the pain. Not loud, not even clear, just a feeling. There's more to this. That's the first sign. Not clarity, but cracks. Cracks in the story you've always told yourself. Cracks in the idea that you were simply unlucky. Cracks in the illusion that your life is chaos with no cause. You start to see that certain patterns keep repeating, that your mother's silence is now your own, that your father's absence echoes in your relationships, that your childhood wounds have become the very fears you're now projecting onto the world. And in that realization, a strange thing happens. You stop asking, "Why me?" and begin asking, "What is this trying to show me?" That shift from victim to witness is the moment your soul begins to remember. Not in full, not yet, but enough to shake the foundation. You see, the first sign that you're awakening to your soul's contract is that you begin to feel your pain differently. Not just as something happening to you, but as something speaking through you. The anger is no longer wild, it becomes directional. The sadness isn't drowning, it's revealing. And when you sit with it, truly sit with it, you begin to see what was hidden. You see the invisible thread, the karmic echo, the repetition that didn't start with you, but chose you to end it. This is not about blame, it's not about absolving those who hurt you. It's about claiming the power you left behind in those moments of pain. Because the soul doesn't hold grudges, it holds memory. And memory always seeks light. You begin to understand that your family wasn't just part of your story. They were your first mirror, the first stage in your soul's curriculum. The first fire you were meant to walk through, not to burn but to awaken. This realization doesn't happen in one moment. It arrives in fragments, in that sudden tear you didn't expect, in the line of a book that hits too close, in a dream where your parents say something they never said in life, in a memory that surfaces and suddenly makes sense. It is your soul returning to the scene of the forgetting, not to punish you, but to retrieve the pieces. This is sacred work. This is the first sign of remembrance. And once it begins, nothing external can distract you for long. You feel pulled inward. You crave solitude. You begin writing letters you never send. You walk through your memories with different eyes. And one day, you realize something that leaves you breathless. They were never meant to give you what you needed. They were meant to awaken you to what you came here to find within yourself. That realization doesn't come from books. It doesn't come from gurus. It comes from sitting with your own life until it starts revealing its sacred geometry. That's what's beginning now. And if you're here, listening, feeling, remembering, it means the contract is no longer asleep. Your soul is waking up. And with that awakening comes choice. Not the kind the world taught you. The kind that says, "I no longer reject what shaped me, because now I can shape it." Let that land in your heart. And if this moment sparked something inside you, leave a comment below. What's the first memory that came back while listening? Your voice matters here, because every soul that remembers helps another one begin. And if you want to keep going, to uncover more of what your soul agreed to long before this life began, subscribe. We walk this path together. In the next chapter, we'll dive into the second sign. When the people you once blamed begin to look like reflections of your own evolution. Let's keep going. The second sign. The mirror begins to speak. There's a strange shift that happens when your soul starts to remember its contract. You stop seeing your family as a fixed story, and you begin to see them as reflections, not of who you are, but of who you were asked to become. This is not the kind of realization that arrives through thought. It comes through energy, through emotion, through patterns that finally begin to reveal their purpose. You begin to feel a quiet awareness behind your reactions, an observer who sees the pain, yes, but also sees the lesson beneath it. That's the second sign. The mirror begins to speak, and what once enraged you now reveals something you never noticed. Maybe you recognize your mother's wounds in your own inner dialogue. Maybe you see your father's fear echoing in your hesitation to trust. Maybe your sister's cruelty was a mirror of the shame you never spoke of. It doesn't justify what happened, but it shifts the lens. Because once the mirror speaks, you realize something essential. They were not just your family. They were the first energetic archetypes you were sent to meet, not to admire, but to evolve through. You begin to see that some of the people who hurt you weren't even aware they were playing a role. They were carrying their own pain, their own contracts, their own karmic patterns, some of which go back generations. And your soul, in its deep courage, chose to enter that web of wounds, not to be lost in it, but to bring light to the threads. You came to interrupt the story, to stop the cycle, to see what they couldn't, to speak what they feared, to feel what they numbed, and in doing that, you changed the entire frequency of the family line. That's what remembering does. It doesn't erase the pain. It gives it a purpose. You begin to understand that forgiveness is not for them. It's for your own vibration. It's the release of cords that kept you bound to an identity that never belonged to your soul. It's the reclaiming of energy that was buried under years of silence, resistance, and inherited shame. And sometimes, this moment comes with grief. Because once you see the pattern, once you understand the mirror, you also realize what was lost. The childhood that never felt safe. The love that came with conditions. The years spent trying to be understood by people who could only meet you at the level of their own survival. You mourn the dream of who they could have been. And then, you breathe. Because the morning clears the fog, and what's left is truth. You stop waiting for them to change. You stop needing them to apologize. You stop trying to rewrite the past, because the mirror has done its job. It has shown you who you are not, so that you can finally remember who you are. You are not the child who was unloved. You are not the victim of their limitations. You are not the carrier of pain that wasn't yours to begin with. You are the one who woke up, the one who saw, the one who chose to end the echo. That is sacred. That is power. That is the sign that the soul contract has moved from dormancy into activation. It's here that many feel called to their deeper path, to healing work, to creation, to breaking silence, to teaching others how to rise from what tried to bury them. Because once you've seen the mirror, you realize it wasn't about them. It was never about them. It was about you, becoming the version of yourself that could transform everything you were handed. And if that speaks to something inside you right now, take a moment, breathe, feel, let the realization settle like dust in sacred light. And if it moved something in you, comment below. The mirror has spoken. Let that be your declaration. And if you want to walk deeper into this remembering, subscribe, because in the next chapter, we'll explore the third sign, the moment your family's story stops defining you, and your soul starts rewriting the timeline. Let's keep going. The third sign, you stop repeating and start rewriting. There comes a moment in your awakening when you no longer see your family's pain as a prison, but as a pattern, and patterns once seen can be changed. This is the third sign of soul remembrance. You stop repeating what was handed to you, and you begin to rewrite the story. It doesn't happen all at once. At first, it's just a pause, a hesitation before reacting the way you always have. Someone triggers you, and instead of snapping, you breathe, you witness. And in that space, between stimulus and response, you realize this doesn't have to go the same way anymore. That pause is sacred. That pause is power. It is the place where karma ends and freedom begins, because the soul did not come here to play the same old script. It came here to alchemize it. You begin to recognize your voice rising above generations of silence. You begin to set boundaries your mother never could. You begin to choose rest instead of self-sacrifice, love instead of survival, truth instead of peacekeeping. And each time you do, something shifts not only in you, but in the field around you. Because healing is not linear, it's energetic. And when you shift the entire line that came before you. Your ancestors feel it, your descendants will live it. That's what soul contracts are about. They are not punishments, they are invitations. To remember what was lost, to restore what was broken, to evolve what was incomplete. You begin to feel the gravity of your presence. You no longer float aimlessly through your lineage. You anchor it. You plant something new. And yes, it's heavy sometimes. You might feel like the black sheep, the one who feels everything, the one who sees too much, the one who doesn't belong. But what if that sense of not belonging is exactly what makes you the one meant to change everything? You were not born to fit in. You were born to awaken a sleeping line. And every time you choose differently, you fulfill that contract a little more. Maybe you are the first to say, no more silence, no more self-abandonment, no more pretending everything's fine. You realize the anger that once consumed you was actually the fire of transformation, and the sadness, that was the grief of remembering what your soul came here to repair. You stop seeking validation from the ones who can't give it, and instead, you begin to mother yourself, father yourself, raise yourself, as the person your younger self always needed. This is how timelines shift, not through magic spells, but through presence, through awareness, through conscious choice. It's not easy, but it's divine. And maybe now that you look back at your family and feel less rage and more reverence, not for what they did, but for what they showed you. You see them as souls too. Some who fell asleep in their contracts, some who never got the chance to remember, some who were waiting for you to be the one who would. This is remembrance, not of pain, but of purpose. And when you touch that truth, you no longer need them to understand, because you understand, and that's enough. If this resonates with your path, if you've been feeling the weight of being the cycle breaker, leave a comment below. I'm rewriting the story. Let the universe witness your vow, and if this journey is speaking your language, subscribe, so you can walk with others who are rewriting theirs too. The work you're doing is not small, it ripples through time. And in the next chapter, we'll explore the fourth sign, when the people who once triggered your pain begin to serve as initiators of your power. Keep walking. There's more waiting. The fourth sign, your triggers become initiations. There comes a time when the people who once hurt you no longer hold the same power. Their words may still sting, their absence may still echo, but deep within, you begin to feel something shift, a separation, not of coldness, but of clarity. You are no longer trapped in the reaction. You are standing beside it, watching, choosing. That's the fourth sign of remembrance. Your triggers become teachers. At first, it's disorienting. You see your mother's face, hear the same tone in her voice, but instead of shrinking, you recognize the energy beneath it. Fear, shame, unprocessed grief. You no longer internalize it. You witness it. And in that witnessing, you reclaim your sovereignty. You are no longer the child in the storm. You are the soul holding the lantern. You begin to understand something no one ever told you. You were never here to stay wounded. You were here to alchemize the wound into wisdom. And so, what once triggered tears now initiates awareness. You begin to see the pattern playing out, not just in your life, but in theirs. You realize how much your father's silence was learned, how much your sister's cruelty was protection, how much your mother's anxiety was inherited. And instead of absorbing it, you begin to offer something different: presence, boundaries, compassion, not as a gift to them, but as a gift to your soul's growth. You stop arguing to be understood, and you start embodying the understanding. That's the moment you rise, not above them, but into yourself. Because when the trigger becomes the teacher, you are no longer the victim of your past. You become the initiated one, the alchemist, the soul in remembrance, the healer of the unseen. The fifth sign, guidance comes from within. This is perhaps the quietest, but most profound sign. When the soul remembers, the outside world stops being your compass. You no longer ask others for permission. You no longer chase approval. You no longer beg for signs in every direction, because something ancient awakens in your chest, and it speaks. It may not use words, but it knows. A sensation in your gut, a pulse of stillness in your heart, a knowing that rises uninvited, but unmistakable. You trust it, even when you can't explain it, even when it makes no sense to the world, even when it leads you away from everything familiar. This is the voice of your contract. It doesn't shout, it remembers. And as it gets louder, you begin to realize you don't need more information. You need more integration. The books, the teachings, the signs, they're beautiful, but they were only ever meant to activate what was already inside you. Now, you begin to follow your own rhythm. You may change careers, end relationships, move away, or simply stop pretending. You live lighter, not because life gets easier, but because you carry less of what isn't yours. And the strange thing is, as you align with your inner truth, the world around you begins to reflect it. New people enter, synchronicities appear, your external reality starts to mirror your internal clarity. It's not magic, it's coherence, and it's the sign that your soul is no longer seeking, it is embodying. This is not the end of the awakening, but it is the place where the seeking softens and the being begins. If any of this echoes in your own life, drop a comment below. Say, I'm listening to my own soul. And if this kind of remembrance speaks to you, subscribe. This space was created for souls like yours. In the final chapter, we'll reveal the sixth and seventh signs and close this journey with a truth that may change how you see every wound you've ever carried. Let's go deeper. The sixth sign. You forgive without needing an apology. There comes a moment when you realize you've stopped waiting. You no longer wait for the apology that never came. You no longer rehearse the conversation that never happened. You no longer carry the hope that someone will finally say, "I see what I did to you." Instead, you see it for yourself. You see all of it. The wound, the confusion, the humanity of the ones who hurt you. The ways they couldn't love you the way you needed. And you don't condone it. You don't pretend it didn't leave scars, but you release it. That's the sixth sign. Forgiveness becomes a natural consequence of remembrance, because forgiveness isn't about them. It's about freeing your frequency. You understand now, you came here to walk through this pain, but not to carry it forever. Your soul doesn't need revenge. It seeks release. It seeks lightness. And forgiveness is lightness. It's the sacred closing of a karmic loop. It's the silent choice to say, "I choose peace over protection, freedom over resentment, presence over pain." This doesn't mean you invite them back. It doesn't mean you open doors that were closed for a reason. It means you take your energy back, all of it, and you plant it in your own soil, because you've remembered enough now to know that carrying the pain no longer serves your becoming. You're not erasing what happened. You're reclaiming who you are beyond it, and in that moment, you become lighter, wiser, and deeply, deeply whole. The seventh sign. You remember, you chose all of this. This is the final and most sacred sign. It arrives not with a flash, but with a stillness. You sit with your life, and instead of asking, "Why did this happen to me?" you whisper, "I remember. I chose this." Not from the mind, from the soul. You remember that before this lifetime, before this body, before this name, you stood in the realm of light with the beings who guide you still, and you said, "Send me where I'm most needed, even if it breaks me first." And they sent you here, to this body, to this family, to this exact life. Because only this path could unlock the exact remembrance your soul came to embody. You begin to understand that your suffering was not punishment. It was a sacred fire, a fire that burned away illusion, ego, and fear, until only truth remained. And that truth is this: you were never lost. You were always remembering. You remember the contract. You remember the choice. You remember that even the worst moments were part of the sacred path. And with that, everything softens. The anger, the grief, the resistance. Because now, you no longer run from your story. You walk inside it, eyes open, heart open, soul on fire. You become the one you were waiting for. And your family, they are no longer chains, they are the sacred origin point of your rising. If this journey touched you, know this: you are not alone. There are thousands of souls waking up to the exact same truth, in different bodies, in different countries, but with the same remembering. And now it's your turn to speak. Comment below. I remember the contract. Let this be your signature, a spiritual echo through time, reminding others that we are remembering together. And if you feel the call to walk deeper into this path, subscribe. Because this channel isn't content, it's a portal, and the next message your soul needs may arrive in the very next video. You're not just watching, you're awakening. The remembering has begun, and the path continues, and if you're ready, news.